coming to you live from Bangkok, Thailand. I'm just going to give people a moment to get in and get settled before we get started. Make sure when you come in, you just drop us a pin, tell us where you are watching from. Last week we had some I think we had people from Chiang Mai, from Florida, from kind of all over. Alrighty. Well, good morning if you are in Asia. Good evening if you are in the United States. And yes, and for those of you in Europe or in the Central, we'll see you when you wake up. Okay, so as we wait for people to come in, I want to share with you guys some events happening at Ebony Expats this week. First of all, we have daily yoga with Tori J happening every weeknight at 9 p.m. That's a great way to come, stretch our bodies, and get in the movement of things. We also have weekly events, a whole bunch of them, like Monday night game nights, Taco Tuesdays, self care Sundays, the whole work. So if you want to connect with Ebony Expats, please go to the Ebony Expats page, give it a like if you already haven't. And yeah, come join us in some of our group events. It's more important than ever that we stay connected, especially since our personas are now digital. So yeah, please feel free to join us. Already, I'm going to give it a few more minutes. You like our theme song there? Isn't it great? Okay, so good morning. I'm Liana Freeman, political correspondent and comedian here at Ebony Expats. We are here to keep you updated, informed, and empowered through a global network of Black travelers and expats. As we head into week 6 or week 7, it's starting to become clear which countries will be opening in mid May and which countries will see an extension of their deadline. So, what will become of the rest of 2020? We can only theorize from this point. But today, we're going to bring you news as it pertains to the Black experience abroad. And we're also going to bring you an update from Valentine, the Black expat we spoke with last week, as he was being forcibly quarantined to his hotel just outside of Guangzhou, China. Ebony expats caught up with him just for an update to give our listeners some closure, and we'll be bringing that to you today too. Alrighty, so we're gonna just go ahead and jump right in there. Okay, so the news this week definitely conjures a mix of stories that are both grim but also prophetic, as experts around the world either try to ease the impact of coronavirus or they try to prevent other countries from having their second wave of coronavirus. But there is a consensus among medical experts that everything that requires large gatherings of people in the thousands is canceled for the rest of 2020. We learned that Burning Man, which usually takes place in August, is canceled, as well as Oktoberfest. Any musical events or large sporting gatherings will not be safe in 2020 and will have to resume in 2021. I don't know about you guys, but I noticed this week, particularly doing research on what's going on around the world, that a lot of my bucket list items require thousands of people to be around, like Mardi Gras or Carnival or things like that. And I know for 100% sure that I will not be throwing it back in the club anytime soon. Alrighty, so let's get right in there. So, in an effort to help stranded travelers, Emirates Airlines has been given the go ahead to resume flights to places like Johannesburg, Frankfurt, London, and Manila and Madrid for outbound passengers only. So, according to NPR, there will be no more than a handful of flights going out. All passengers will be required to wear masks, wear gloves, adhere to strict social distancing policies, and get this, they will be administered a coronavirus blood test that only takes 10 minutes to give a result. After the passengers have received their blood test, they'll get a coronavirus certificate and be on to their next destination. In these flights, carry on luggage is not allowed, only small handbags and briefcases. I thought this story was particularly important just so we can kind of get a glimpse into the future of travel. Although Emirates Airlines won't be officially opening until July, they made note to speak about not having little like the duty free magazines and things where germs can cling on to, and really restricting the luggage that comes into the cabin. Countries like New Zealand, as we talked about last week, who implemented very swift and very strict stay at home orders, will be opening in the next few weeks, whereas countries more hard hit, like Spain, actually reported that they will not be opening their borders for tourism until December. So, a major theme of the news stories this week is basically a worldwide healthcare crisis as the demand on medical professionals only grows. So, let's go ahead and look at some of those stories. Our first story comes out of Italy as an Italian manufacturer unveiled new cabin crew seating plans, which will give passengers more and more social distance, and they will also put barriers between the seats to create some type of barrier between passengers. We were actually able to get a photo of these new seats by the Italian manufacturer. So basically, this is coming as many airlines have, of course, seen a drastic drop in air travel, and so they want to just make sure that when we are able to travel again, that we can do so safely. Some unfortunate news out of Japan. Japan continues to experience a surge of coronavirus, which is actually threatening the collapse of their healthcare system. The country's state of emergency, which was declared on April 6th, it has now been extended as hospitals in Japan are actually being forced to turn people away. According to BBC News, a patient told the ambulance that, told the outlet, excuse me, that he boarded an ambulance because he had coronavirus symptoms and had to stop at 80 hospitals, 80, before he was able to receive treatment. Human moment. Just let's take a second. Could you imagine you're in an ambulance because you have some type of coronavirus related symptom, and maybe even sliding into a critical state, and you have to stop at 80 different hospitals, not because you don't have the right insurance, not because they want to deny you care, but just because they just don't have the capacity to help you in the staff. So this is why it's so important that we're still staying home, even though you may be getting stir crazy. These measures are quite important. Alrighty. BBC also reports that doctors belonging to the Organization of General Practitioners in Japan are coming to the aid of medical workers in Tokyo, Japan's most hardest hit city. A doctor by the name of Koshin Tamura, the deputy head of the General Association of Practitioners, proclaimed, um, this is this is to prevent the medical system from crumbling. He goes on to also say that everyone needs to lend a helping hand, otherwise hospitals will break down. Prime Minister Abe Shinzo is facing a lot of backlash for not implementing travel restrictions earlier in attempt to protect the economy. Now, much like doctors in the United States and in other countries, Japanese doctors are complaining about not having the proper PPE and the medical protective gear to treat coronavirus patients. In other news, Brazil sees a healthcare crisis of its own as their far-right President Jair Bolsonaro remains largely dismissive, excuse me, of coronavirus impacts. Local mayors and governors have taken it upon themselves to implement quarantine regulations and lockdowns, but this has become a greater challenge as the president has not only publicly criticized politicians who've shut their government down, calling their actions poisonous, but even went as far as to join anti-lockdown protesters. Yeah, just take that in. The president cites that the suffering of the economy will have a larger harm to the greater societies of Brazil than the virus itself. Now, does this sound familiar? Actually, look, there it is. President Trump and Bolsonaro are actually very good friends. Here is a photo of them together at Mar-a-Lago. I guess coronavirus denying champions of alternative facts, far right baby boomer presidents flock together. Who would have known? But on a more serious note, meanwhile, in the city of Manaus, in Brazil, they're reporting that 90% of their intensive care units are occupied, and their mayor, Bruno Cavas, says that he will be building 13,000 graves, as he quotes, "The worst is yet to come." On April 25th, the country reported its highest number yet of coronavirus cases, uh, uh, of 5,514, as shown in this image. There has been a sharp increase in Brazil's cases. Some news out of the United States. Donald Trump comes under fire over the unequal distribution of stimulus money brought to us by the CARE Act. According to the Washington Post, the CARE Act allows businesses an unlimited amount of deductions against their non-business income. Business owners can also use losses to avoid paying taxes, and it's estimated that business owners will save an average of $70.3 billion in the next years to come, about $1.6 million apiece, meaning that the greatest benefactors of the CARE Act are not the Americans receiving $1,200 stimulus checks, but those making $1 million a year or more. Additionally, Trump is being sued by an Illinois man who has asked to remain as John Doe in the lawsuit, because there is a provision of the CARE Act that excludes some 1.2 million Americans from receiving stimulus checks as both who stimulus checks who are married to immigrants, excuse me, as both parties filling out a tax return must have a social security number to receive stimulus checks. Donald Trump is nothing but consistent to his wealthy business constituency. But this really shows the need to update a quote. Does everybody know that quote? There's nothing in life certain but death and taxes. I think that it needs a makeover. I think we should say there's nothing certain in life like than death to the poor and tax cuts to the rich, just to give it a more modern, accurate feel. Alrighty, and a heartwarming story, some good news, because of course we have an abundance of bad news, but there are actually some amazing things going on around the world. So, a heartwarming story out of northern Venice, which has actually been under lockdown since March now. A group of women have basically banded together to deliver groceries to the elderly using the iconic gondola. If you've been to Venice, then you probably took some time to do the gondola rides around the canal. But according to the Associated Foreign Press, Row Venice is an all-female nonprofit organization dedicated to preserving the traditional Venetian gondolier techniques. They are supporting elderly and those who cannot leave their house to get food by allowing them to place an order and to place orders online and then receive those deliveries from a farmhouse just outside of Venice. This is not only a win for feminism, but a win for humanity as the goodness of people is coming out even in tragic times. And okay, so our main story comes out of North Korea at today as Kim Jong Un is speculated to be in critical condition after undergoing heart surgery. Although several news outlets claim that there are a handful of intelligence agencies monitoring the dictator's health, former CIA Deputy Division Chief of North Korea explains to CNN, over the years, there have been a number of false rumors about Kim Jong un or his father, and we'll just have to wait to see. And this sentiment was echoed by John Dury, a professor of international relations at Yonsei University in Seoul. He said it's easy to be wrong about this one, as the leader has disappeared from the spotlight before. Now, just 2 days ago, we had message out of Seoul, South Korea, that the leader is alive and well. So we're just waiting for an actual update out of Pyeongchang, North Korea. They say it has been noted that Kim Jong Un has an excessive smoking habit and also leads a high stress lifestyle. Yeah, probably not as high stress as those thrown in North Korean death camps, but you know what they say, out of sight, out of mind, which is ironically what the world will say if he passes. Alrighty. Although Trump has assured the public that the U.S. relationship with South Korea is strong, and although the president has never been known to exaggerate anything, U.S. officials do worry that if Kim Jong Un were to pass, it could place strain on the relationship between the United States and South Korea. Alrighty, that concludes our news for this week. There were definitely a lot of stories, and we're quite interested in your reactions to these stories. If you found them helpful, if you had heard some of them. One thing that I saw circulating around Facebook quite a bit was this $1.6 million figure people making over $1 million. And there were some sources, that unsubstantiated sources, that said, "Oh, millionaires will receive $1 million checks from the government," which isn't true. What it means is that they can write off. They are receiving tax cuts and write offs that could total that amount. Alrighty, so last week, Ebony Expats sat down with Valentine. He was an expat who, despite testing negative for coronavirus and despite not having any recent travel history, he was detained in a Chinese hotel, he was told that this hotel were to hold black people, or black people, African nationals, those of the African diaspora, African Americans. And he let us know through a series of photos and pictures and videos what's going on in his world, the process by which he came to be quarantined. And he also let us know in the surrounding cities of Guangzhou, surrounding areas of Guangzhou, that there were more hotels holding African people suspected of having coronavirus, as officials in Guangzhou had told local people that it was African nationals bringing coronavirus back into the country, which we know is not true. So some good news with Valentine. He was released from quarantine and actually allowed to return to his place. There has definitely been reports of people who have been released from the hotels where they were being quarantined and not allowed to return back home. So this was a really happy story. He bravely interviewed with us, even though he was under close security himself, and he asked that everything but his name remain anonymous. So that kind of tells you about the gravity of the situation, and we're very happy that he's home. But we haven't taken our eyes off of the larger picture, which is there are still many people of African descent being held against their will, or being subject to Jim Crow like discrimination, and the blockage of their civil liberties. So once again, Ebony Expats will share resources to be able to contact government officials in Guangzhou to place pressure on the Chinese government in that area to be more transparent. And you can tweet at any time. You can tweet to Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, with the hashtag Bring Our People Home, to pressure them again into investigating what is going on, and why this is going on, and hopefully put a stop to it. Alrighty, so this concludes our segment of Ebony Expats News. Make sure you tune in next week, as we're going to be sitting down with a regional health expert for Southeast Asia on combating COVID-19. So we're going to be asking him all our questions about how to go into the future with COVID-19, how we should be protecting ourselves. So make sure you tune in for that interview next Wednesday. Also, make sure that you share your reactions from this video, anything that you found interesting, or if you are a traveler who has been stranded by coronavirus, or you want to share, or you're an expat who wants to share how the virus and lockdowns have impacted your life, please let us know. We would love to interview you. Okay, have a wonderful Wednesday, and I'll see you guys next week.